Good morning everyone and welcome to the class. We are doing the chapter The Making of the National Movement, and under this chapter we are doing Khilafat agitation, and we were discussing about the Khilafat issue which arose after the end of the First World War, when in 1920 the British imposed a harsh treaty on the Turkish Sultan, who was known as Khalifa, who was the spiritual and religious guru of all the Muslims who were living in the world. So we have also discussed about the Rowlatt Act and the Rowlatt Satyagraha and the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. So all these happenings were there, and the result of all these incidents was that there aroused a feeling of nationalism. There aroused a feeling of unity among the Hindus and the Muslims against the British rule. And we see that the leaders of Khilafat agitation like Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, they wanted to initiate a full-fledged non-cooperation movement against this British government, and Gandhiji also supported this call for non-cooperation movement. And we find that he urged the Congress to campaign against the Punjab wrongs. Punjab wrongs, what does it mean? It means the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and Khilafat wrong was also there, and both these were the main factor which caused or which aroused this feeling of unity among the Hindus and Muslims, and they both started demanding Swaraj. Okay, and we see that this non-cooperation movement, it was started in the year 1921, and during this non-cooperation movement, as the name suggests, it was a movement which was aimed at not cooperating with the British government. Right? So how people will not cooperate? What were the ways of non-cooperation? The ways were totally non-violent. Right? What were the measures adopted by the people in order to show their non-cooperation towards the British government? The measures were like we see that the students left government-controlled schools and colleges. Not only this, the lawyers, many lawyers like Motilal Nehru, C.R. Das, Raja Gopalachari, Asaf Ali, they gave up their practice. They stopped going to the courts. That was also a kind of non-cooperation. And not only this, as we have seen, Rabindranath Tagore, he renounced this knighthood because of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. So that was also done by other important people. They renounced, they surrendered their titles, British titles, and not only this, the representatives of the members of the council, provincial councils, they stopped going to the council, to the legislature. That is, the boycott of the legislature was also started by the representatives of the people. So these were the various we can say measures adopted by the people to show their non-cooperation with the British government. And not only this, there was also bonfires of foreign clothes. People boycotted foreign clothes also. And during this period, we find from 1920 to 1922, the imports of foreign clothes fell drastically. The import became reduced in a very great extent, because of this boycott of foreign clothes. Okay, but it's not that we find that this kind of situation was prevailing in the country during the non-cooperation movement. So now we will just point it down what were done during the non-cooperation movement, or what measures were adopted by the people in order to show their non-cooperation with the government. So the measures adopted by the people to show their non-cooperation with the government. इसी में से आपका क्वेश्चन भी निकल जा रहा है. Side by side you do questions also, extra questions. What measures were adopted by the people to show their non-cooperation with the government? So what were the measures? The first we can say was students left government controlled schools and colleges. Then lawyers boycotted the courts. Yes, lawyers boycotted the courts, and then we find that the British titles were renounced. That was given back, and then we find that legislatures were also boycotted. The fourth point will be boycott of legislature, and then the next point is public bonfire of foreign clothes. Okay, the fifth point is so these were the measures adopted by the people in order to show their non-cooperation with the government. And now we see that what was the initiative of other initiatives of the people. Like in many cases people resisted British rule non-violently. These are the non-violent methods adopted by the people. These are the non-violent method or non-violent measures. You can add it to this non-violent measures. non-violent measures adopted by the people to show their non-cooperation with the government. But we find that Gandhi ji gave a call for non-cooperation. This movement was done in the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi only, and what we find that many times what happened in many places by many groups and classes, the call of Gandhi to not to cooperate with the British. This was the call of Gandhi, not to cooperate with the British, and it should be done in a non-violent manner only. But what was done by the people who belong to different classes and groups, who belong to different places, they interpreted this call of Gandhi in their own manner. And we can see that they started protesting against the government. They started showing their non-cooperation with the government using violent ways, which was not at all supported by Gandhi. So Gandhi gave a call for non-cooperation and the measures to be adopted. The measures to be adopted by the people to show non-cooperation, it must be non-violent, according to Gandhi. This was the call of Gandhi, but people interpreted that call in their own way, in their own manner, and subsequently what we find that in many places this non-cooperation movement turned out to be violent, which was not at all liked by Gandhi, because it was not in accordance with the ideas of Gandhi. Gandhi's idea was completely based on truth and non-violence. In search of truth, we should follow the path of non-violence. This was the message of Gandhi. This was the principle of Gandhi, but that was not followed. And we find that at many places people connected this movement with their local grievances. Whatever problems they were facing locally, that was completely associated with this movement. And now we find there are some examples like in Kheda, which is in Gujarat. We have discussed Kheda earlier also. So in Kheda, what happened that the peasants, the Patidar peasants, they are the the big peasants, they are the rich peasants. Okay, so these Patidar peasants organized non-violent campaign against the high land revenue which was demanded by the British. So here we see that the Patidars of Gujarat, they linked this non-cooperation movement with their local problem. The local problem of that Kheda, that area Kheda, was high rate of revenue, which the peasants were not ready to pay. So now they organized this non-violent campaign against the high land revenue demand of the British. Likewise, we find that in Andhra, especially in coastal Andhra and interior Tamil Nadu, what happened that liquor shops were picketed. Picketed means when people protest outside a building or shop so that the shop should not open, है ना, कोई भी बाहर से अंदर न जा सके. शॉप की पिकेटिंग का मतलब यही होता है कि उसके एंट्रेंस को ब्लॉक कर देना, टू ब्लॉक द एंट्रेंस. सो इन आंध्र, कोस्टल आंध्रा एंड इंटीरियर तमिलनाडु, picketing of liquor shop was done because there that problem was existing. Liquor की problem थी. So this is what we are I want to convey, that people interpreted the call of Gandhi in their own way. They connected this movement with the local grievances. Okay, and what we see that like Andhra Pradesh के ही अंदर एक और one more district is there, Guntur. In Guntur, we find tribals were there, poor peasants were there. They started a number of forest satyagraha. Forest satyagraha. It was when the British started extending their control over the forest reserve of the country. They categorized some of the forest as a reserve forest in which no people, no Indian were allowed to enter. So against this type of policy of the government, this forest satyagraha was done by the tribals and the poor peasants in Guntur. And we find that sometimes it also happened that they sent their cattle into forest without paying grazing fee. This was the system. If the forest is reserved, then the tribals or the peasants were not allowed to send their cattle for grazing. And if they can send their cattle for grazing if they pay the grazing fee. They had to pay the grazing fee, है So this was also not obeyed by the people. People started disobeying the government. People started sending their cattle in the forest without paying the grazing fee. So this type of so many examples of this type of protest we find. And then we see that people were believing that Gandhiji will be there to get their taxes reduced, and Gandhiji will make all the regulation of forest which was done by the British, it will be abolished by Gandhi. So they were considering that Gandhi something like we can say God, जो कि आपके हर problems को वो आपके solve कर देगा. If people are facing this problem of forest regulations and rules, then they were of the opinion that Gandhi will abolish. With the help of Gandhi, we will abolish all the forest regulations and rules. Similarly, people were of the opinion that Gandhi would get their taxes reduced. So this was the condition. And in many forest villages, peasants, they proclaimed Swaraj. Proclaimed Swaraj means they said that now we are a free country. We are free from the rule of the British. And they believed that Gandhi Raj was about to establish. Now, after the end of the British Raj, there will be Gandhi Raj. So Gandhi became a craze. That was the popularity of Gandhi. That in every part of the country, people were believing that Gandhi will solve all their problems. And after the end of British Raj, there will be Gandhi Raj. Such type of ideas were there inside the mind of the people. And not only there were some other groups, like in Sindh we find Muslim traders and peasants. They were very enthusiastic about Khilafat call because of this religious proximity. They were supporting this Khilafat call, that this movement is to give respect to Khalifa, give its honor back to Khalifa. For that purpose, this movement was started. So they were very much enthusiastic about Khilafat call. And in Bengal also, we find that Khilafat NonCooperation alliance gave enormous communal unity and strength to the national movement. So this was the purpose of Gandhi. That is why Gandhi associated, or we can say Khilafat agitation was started only for that purpose, only for achieving the unity of Hindus and Muslims, because Gandhi was very much aware that the powerful British can be removed only by the unity of the people belonging to different religious community. So we see this is all for today. We will continue with this in the next class.